Hello, my name is Andrea Polli, and I'm a professor of Art Studio and the Mesa del Sol Endowed Chair of Digital Media. I have been working in art and science really from the beginning. I studied engineering, I studied science, was a pre-med for a while, and I always wanted to work at the intersection of art and science, which in the 80s and 90s was really technology oriented, at least for me. So I worked a lot with data and environmental, especially environmental sensing data. So I worked a lot with data, specifically environmental sensing data and data related to weather. More recently, my focus in art and science has gone towards biology, art and biology, and bioart. And that has been an interesting progression because biology has become so enmeshed with technology, with the sequencing of the human genome, synthetic biology. So there was kind of a natural evolution for me to go from computer science and art to biology and art, or bioscience and art.
You are one of the recipients of the Community Engagement Research Lecturer Award. Um, can you talk a little bit about your work in community and how that award, came about?
Well, I have been just so honored to be a part of the incredible group of faculty and researchers who have received the Community Engaged Research Award. There's so much incredible community engagement happening here at the university, um, both main and North Campus. And I started to work with community engagement through a National Science Foundation grant with engineering, with electrical engineering. And my role in that grant was to help to raise awareness of work being done related to solar energy and really trying to look at alternatives to fossil fuels. So as an artist who works with technology and science, I was charged with putting together a team of students who would then create public awareness projects about solar energy. After I completed that project, I really wanted to keep working more with the community, so I started STEAM New Mexico. STEAM is an acronym for science, technology, the STEM, which we often hear about, science, technology, engineering, and math, with the arts. So that's the A in STEAM. And STEAM New Mexico for 10 years was supported by AmeriCorps, the AmeriCorps VISTA program. And so we were able to, through that AmeriCorps VISTA program, we were able to support as many as 15 full-time VISTAs. Now, VISTAs work in the community at the level of fundraising, volunteer organizing, things like that. So you might think about it as you might be someone working in the community by working in a somewhere where that gives food to people. So you might be the person that's serving the food to people. A Vista would be the person who's organizing the people who serve food to people. So that's a perfect program. That was a perfect program for university students, recent graduates. And really here at UNM, we need that. Our recent graduates need to have opportunities in the community and want to have opportunities to help people in the community and that can use their skills. Yes, of course, it's important to hand out the food to people who are hungry, but to use your upper level skills that you learn in college to do more was a great opportunity through the STEAM and AmeriCorps VISTA program. So we worked with Fuse Makerspace. We worked with Taos Paseo. So we worked across the kind of northern corridor of New Mexico and partnered with organizations so we could actually place our vistas, recent graduates, students, graduate students, at these organizations throughout New Mexico in order to help and build capacity for these organizations. And I'm happy to say that several of the organizations were just starting out or fledgling, and we were really able to, with this work, including Fuse Makerspace, we had the first full-time employees at Fuse Makerspace. So we were really able to help build these organizations over time and become sustainable.
Your role as a academic and as an artist um, play a big impact in shaping the minds of young students today. Um, what are your thoughts about, the emerging role of artificial intelligence and also, maybe as it relates to innovation? Can you talk a little bit about, maybe where your work sits and how you think about, teaching, the next generation about these tools?
I was afraid you were going to ask that. Um, you know, in my experience and some of the research that I've been doing related to AI, and I've really come to the point now, and I know this will be evolving as AI is evolving, of course, that it's incredibly important for students and creatives, especially, to be very mindful about how they're using these tools. Um, and that's, I mean, I think it's a huge challenge, and it becomes even more important for us at the university as a community to really teach those skills of being aware of how you come up with new ideas, how you parse out what is an original idea or an idea that you want to pursue, and what is something that's kind of being fed to you by an AI. And I mean, that's incredibly complex. But I will say it's something that we, as artists, as creatives, we have been dealing with and understanding. It's a part of our process, right? Where we sort of look at, this is our personal experience, this is how our experience is affecting our ideas and our creativity, and how do we parse that out? How do we decide, what to do, what we're passionate about, right? And so I think AI is a wonderful tool. It's been around for a very long time. There's been scientists have been using certain types of AI. So this new sort of general AI can be a great tool. And as creatives, we need to be very mindful about how we engage with it and understand how we're using it to develop ideas.
You talked a little bit in our conversation prior about, being able to do a residency in Portugal. So you've done projects, all over the world. Um, how does that experience, maybe think about, what you bring to the communities here in New Mexico?
Well, what was so fantastic about the residency in Portugal is that we were able to bring Marta de Menénez, who is a world-renowned bioartist, here to New Mexico for 6 months to engage directly with the classroom through a Fulbright Scholar in Residence grant. So through that connection with Marta, which I first got connected with Marta at a conference in Mexico City 6 or 7 years ago. But then we kept in contact. She started a residency program in Portugal. Some people I worked with through AmeriCorps VISTA were going to Portugal and doing projects. So that kind of exchange, and we're hoping actually to keep that exchange going. One of our adjunct professors is going there in September, actually. And we're hoping to eventually have students go there through an international exchange program. So
Fantastic. And that exposure is so crucial to, opening up new opportunities. And I think it's, part of this notion of community, like community building. And Is there anything else in your work that you're doing currently that, that you'd like people to know about?
Well, I'll say one more thing about Marta, actually, when she was here. So we teach a pretty intensive course in bioart and design. It's 6 credits. The students have an intensive lab and a lecture class. And so Marta was here for the lab, and she developed our first CRISPR curriculum. So she had been doing that in her own workshops at the residency. So she was able to give a CRISPR workshop and train us as faculty, myself and our adjunct faculty, on how to use it. So that was really exciting. Not only kind of physically hands-on doing CRISPR and for the students to understand that, but also to understand some of the kind of underlying concepts behind that. Right now, what I'm working on is materials, and specifically, well, one of the things I'm working on with materials is alternatives to plastics. We have such a glut and so many issues, even here in New Mexico, with plastics being everywhere in our environment. And but there are many wonderful alternatives, using biodesign, using natural materials or plant-based materials. So I've been experimenting a little bit with that, and I've been working also with kind of clays, some of our natural clays here, and glass. So kind of thinking about ways to integrate those materials, and then also living materials or growing materials.
The notion of culture and materiality play any role in that?
We have such a rich history of materials here in New Mexico. We have such a wealth of materials here in New Mexico. And at the same time, I think there's a lot of that knowledge is being lost or not maintained. And certainly, for the example that you gave on using 3D printers, we use clay 3D printers in my lab. A lot of people are interested in using those new technologies. They're amazing. They give you a lot of control and power over what you're creating, and you can create new forms, which are pretty incredible. So integrating those kinds of 3D printers and those kinds of tools with our more traditional materials, which actually we don't really know that much about, like scientifically and engineering wise. There's thousands of years of knowledge from using it. But that bridging that with the scientific and the engineering analysis is a rich field of research right now. So that's a place both where using new technologies can bring in young people and people who want to do creative new things and create new forms into understanding traditional materials and forms, but also people who are studying science and technology can add a lot to the conversation about those materials and where they're coming from and how we can preserve them, and so many different areas.
As we kind of wrap this up, I think, one of the things that I'd be interested in is if you were, talking to a young student or a creative, what would be the thing that you would advise them in this kind of, new world that we're kind of moving in? What would be some advice you would give somebody, that's maybe looking at engineering or arts? What would be something that you would like them to take away?
Well, I have 2 little kids. I have a 7-year-old and a 6-year-old. And so I'm thinking about that a lot, actually. And I would say, so right off the bat, what I can say is what I think is so important is to use your hands and make things, do things with your hands, write things, draw things with your hands, because they're finding in the research, and we know this also intuitively, and we know this from our classes, when you are drawing something with by hand, when you're writing something by hand, you were retaining it, it's coming into your brain. And so much of what's happening with AI and our screen-based existence is that we're not retaining that material as much. I know this for myself personally. I'm not retaining the material as much unless I'm, printing it out and reading it on paper, notating what I'm reading by hand. There's really something about that connection between our bodies and our minds that is, that's the information that's feeding the AI is coming from human experience and human knowledge, and our experience and our knowledge is coming from the interface between our bodies and our minds, our environment and our minds. So I think that, get out there, build your house, fix your plumbing, do work with clay, work with other materials, use your hands. I think is the most important thing right now.
Well, this is our last question, and I think this is more specifically to, our unique institution here at the University of New Mexico, and the work that a lot of people do is in the community, and so we've been able to create this new Office of Community Engagement. What are your perspectives on having a resource like this? Is there something that you could impart in terms of the road that you've created for your own work, and how can we do this work better at our institution?
I think our students are connected to their communities already. I think they want to work in their communities. I think a lot of them, when they come to the university, there's a bittersweet moment where they feel like they're being disconnected from their communities. And if the Office of Community Arts Partnership can kind of remake that connection and give opportunities to students to work in the community for college credit and show, what they can do, I think that will really make the experience here at UNM for students much richer and make the influence that the university can have on the community and vice versa much stronger. My name's Andrea Polli. I'm a professor of studio art and Mesa del Sol Endowed Chair of Digital Media.